So it is my pleasure to introduce to you tonight's guest, author Fran Quittel, a native New Yorker who since 1996 has split her time between the San Francisco Bay Area and 57th Street in Manhattan at the foot of Central Park. Fran has a BA from Hunter College and an MPhil from Yale University. Until the Central Park Lost Mitten party, Fran wrote career and business books, as well as a regular column in Computer World. In 2008, she began a successful grassroots effort that eventually led to amending the Dodd-Frank Financial Reform Act that restored $370 million to 9,500 bank depositors. The Central Park Lost Mitten party was inspired by a visit to the Brooklyn Academy of Music, where her beloved Aunt Florence dropped a glove. To save the evening, Fran said, quote, "Don't worry about that glove. It's in Central Park having a party," end quote. To which Aunt Florence replied, "Now that's all right in a story for children." Fran's beautiful book was chosen by the Central Park Conservancy for its visitor centers, and she is a regular FAO Schwarz flagship store a regular visitor at FAO Schwarz's flagship store at Rockefeller Center, where she signs books and encourages families to read. Please welcome Fran Quittel.
Oh, it's so fun to see everyone, including, I'm going to signal one person, Joel Rayfield, who I've known since the day I was born. And here he is watching me do this. He must be laughing. But this is really wonderful. And I want to thank Giovanni Iannacci for inviting me. I know Giovanna for 10 years. We've just said how quickly it has gone by. And I want to thank the Harrison Public Library for having me. And I just want to say that this is an event for authors. This is not an event for children. So if you are thinking about writing a book, I'm going to give you a little rundown on some of the things that need to happen in order for a book, a children's book, to come to life. I want authors and writers to understand that it's very competitive in the children's book market, and lots of people have very good ideas. And you are going to see how I was able to bring my idea to life. Now, let's see, I need to share my screen, but you know something, here, okay, here we go.
When you open it, just click on the first slide.
And then yeah, but you know something, what oh, this is so interesting.
Here we go.
I'm looking for the little PowerPoint.
I think this is it.
That lets me show just the slides and not, let's see if I can do it this way.
From beginning, yeah.
Okay. So can you hear me? Yes? Okay, I see nodding heads. What I want to show you is really the end of this story, or where we are now. So, and today I'm wearing my FAO dress. I love being at FAO. It's like magic land. And so you can see I'm in my FAO dress, and I have a little sticker on myself. And that sticker, when I go to FAO, I sign books and they say signed at FAO Schwarz at Rockefeller Center. So I want you to see that, including the book, I package myself in the same way. I fit right into the environment, and I have the time of my life when I go there. The other shot is of me at Central Park in the dairy, and that was the first place when I, and you'll hear the story of how the book came to be there. That was the very first order I had All right, now this is what the book looks like. This is the front cover, the Central Park Lost Mitten Party. And I want you to notice that the cover has four different kinds of type for the title and several different colors. And that makes the title pop out. And then on the bottom, you can see the lost mittens, the shoes and gloves having a party. And this theme of having a party, if you're lost, that you go to Central Park and you have a party, and then magically you come home. This is a feel-good story for children and adults. When Aunt Florence lost her glove and I said to her, that glove is having a party in Central Park, and she said, now that's okay in a story for children, what I realized was that this was really a concept that was universal, that everybody, whether you're a child or a grown-up, everyone has the feeling in life of having lost something. And it's not the end of the world. So as I began to think about how I wanted to develop the story, and I actually wrote the first draft of the story right away, but then I worked on it for about 6 years. And my story really evokes stories that we know from the past, Alice in Wonderland, The Wizard of Oz, and Peter Pan. And I had this idea that when we lost something in real life, when the mother comforts the child, we enter, like Alice in Wonderland, this beautiful, magical land that is full color. And I understood that I wanted to convey the idea that the parent, the grown up, was comforting the child, that it wasn't the end of the world. And the parent comforted the child, and you'll see by reading a book. And as I said before, this experience is universal, that adults lose things too. And I wanted the magic of the story to also appeal to adults. Later on, I originally thought that I wanted to teach about the park, but later on, I had the idea of how important the park was in terms of urban public parks. And I wanted as well to highlight Central Park and all of the important work of the Conservancy. Now, originally, I don't know if you'll believe me, all I had was the story written on sheets of paper with clip art. And I began to go around. I went to, it's a whole other story if I tell you how I got there, but I immediately got to the head guy at FAO Schwarz, and I got to the head guy of Central Park's retail shops. And they told me, they gave me some very important clues. And they told me that they wanted a finished story and they wanted artwork that was faithful to the park. And FAO said to me, I want you to remember that you have to put Central Park in the title of the book and also in the first line. The very next thing that happened, here I had FAO Schwarz, the top of the line, interested in my book. And this head guy was helping me develop the text and refine it. And then the Central Park head guy was telling me exactly how to market the book. All of a sudden, my mother fell down and broke her hip. And that began 7 years of mom duty. And I then had a new responsibility, which was keeping the project alive. How did I do that? I had two things going. One was, I'm going to just show you, a beautiful quilt that I had made by an artist. And I had this piece of paper that, very fine paper, glossy paper, that had a couple of verses of the story and how to get in touch with me. And when I had the quilt, I went and I met with museums, I met with publishers, I met with stores, agents, I met with stores. I just kept talking about the project. And at first I thought maybe this beautiful quilt could become the artwork for the story. Later on, I began to see that that did not work. So I tried some other things. And I just tried different artists, and there were experiments that I made, and people wanted to order the book, but all I still had were the sheets of paper with the clip art. So eventually I decided that since FAO and the Conservancy and museums wanted to order this book, what I should do was find artists that I thought could execute the concept. And mind you, it was very hard to get an agent or a publisher interested in the book at that time. So the woman in the yellow dress is a woman who designs, she is a painter, and she does beautiful work, Sufi dancers, animated characters, and she has a terrific personality. She really wanted to work with me. But what I found was that she couldn't draw humans, and she was not good in drawing urban landscapes. And my story started out in an urban landscape with a mother and a child. And when the child lost the glove, then we shift into Magic Land. So I had to find somebody else who could draw urban landscapes and humans. And that is Anna Podvysotska in the green dress. And Anna was studying to be an architect, a beautiful painter. I also had a graphic designer. That graphic designer eventually became ill. I needed a second graphic designer. I had an editor and a proofreader. And I also, just in case anybody is an author and wants to execute a concept like this, I wanted to own all of the artwork. So these were work for hire agreements. Then I fell down. I had a freak accident and I broke my ankle. A child was walking in one direction, I was walking in the other, and that child was carrying a doggy bag of food. And the doggy bag broke open just as our paths crossed, and I slid into a pile of noodles Alfredo, and I had a double fracture of my ankle. And I had to sit for 3 months in one place. One of the artist who was in the yellow dress, she said to me, I want you to draw the entire book. She said, I want you to lay out the text. I want you to draw everything that you want in the book. And I want you to put everything that you want into every page. Well, here I had been studying Central Park history. I'd taken a lot of photographs. I had been thinking of what I wanted on every page. I decided I wanted an extensive notes section. I wanted the front pages and the back pages to have little quizzes that would engage the reader. I understood the importance of the Conservancy and the urban public parks movement, and that was what I wanted to dedicate the book to, so I designed the artwork. Now, I want you to understand that I had been walking in Central Park for years. I'm probably not alone. Whenever my mother was ill or sick or something was going on, I just walked in the park and I took a lot of pictures. And I was focused on the beautiful detail of the park. And you can see these, what I'm showing you are not panoramic views of the park. They're the intricate details of the artwork. And as I was looking at how I would lay out the book and the artwork that I wanted, I decided that that artwork should be part of the characters of the book and part of the lost mittens and whatever was lost. And you'll see how I brought those elements into the artwork and how the artist took my basic drawings and then illustrated the story. The first idea I had was that the mitten, the lost mitten, would have a giraffe. And it just so happened, the picture that you see of me with the giraffes, that was actually very serendipitous. Because the first time I went to FAO and signed books, where did they put me? They put me next to the giraffes. So here this mitten with the giraffe became something really important for FAO. This was the rosette from Bethesda Terrace in the heart of the park. And I asked for the rosette from Bethesda Terrace to be put into the gown of the wizard. The wizard is the element, is the magician that enables all of the lost mittens to magically go home. So the wizard is a very important character. And that wizard carried the rosette, which is the heart of the park, in his gown. I also had, if you look, this is Gothic Bridge. This was another idea that I had, and it turned out to be a tremendous idea. I want you to take a look at the buttresses on the left and the right of that bridge, and then take a look at the pink mitten. That pink mitten is based on Gothic Bridge. And people who are reading the book, reading the text, get the feeling that they are inside Central Park because they are surrounded by all of the architectural elements. These are some of the mittens that were, the mittens that were designed. The other idea that I had was that the color would have to shift. And that meant we would go from daytime to a starry night as we entered the magical world of Central Park after the mitten was lost. Now, remember that I told you that I had been tutored, that the very first sentence of the story had to have Central Park in it. So the story begins, one morning near Central Park's fountains and streams, a little girl slept, dreaming teddy bear dreams. And you can see that she has a blue blanket with stars on it. And we see a little blue. When the girl loses her glove, there's a little blue. When the mother reads to the girl, there is more blue. And here, I want to go ahead one more. When we're in Magic Land, we're entirely blue. We have this blast of color. This is how we know we're in Magic Land. I'm going to go back one slide to show you. You see the mitten. When the girl loses the mitten and the mother reads to that child, that mitten is already outside in the window dancing. And here where I was invoking Peter Pan and the Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland, that mitten, children have a feeling when they lose something that maybe that object is unhappy because it's lonely. And I wanted to show from the very beginning that the mitten wasn't lonely. The mitten was having a party. Okay, now, another clue that I had was that my details always had to be faithful to the park. So this is a shot of Graywack Arch. And if you notice, at the top of that of the arch, there's a railing. And we see different colors of the arch, and we see a bench. I wasn't satisfied when I looked at that. I took this picture, but I want to show you as I was working on the artwork for this particular text, I want you to notice the detail of the pavement under that bench. Now, the artist actually took my photograph and the way I put it together. And I want you to notice these elements. This is why the book was immediately purchased by the Conservancy, because it was faithful to the park. On the left, you see a lamp. There are 1,600 Henry Bacon lampposts in New York, and the top of that lamp has a botanical form of leaves, buds, and seeds. And every one of these lamps has a little acorn at the top. So all of the drawings of the book had to have that acorn at the top. Jacob Raymould, who is one of the three designers of the park, along with Frederick Olmsted and Calvert Vaux, Jacob Raymould was a very interesting guy. He was a musician and an architect, and he had studied at the Alhambra Palace of Granada. And when he designed Graywack Arch, if you notice, the top is a Moorish railing. It's a Saracen railing. And you notice that the artist also captured the variegated colors of the sandstone. Graywack Arch is actually named for the Hudson River sandstone that comprises the arch. Then we have the wrought iron Robert Moses bench. And underneath that bench we have the pavement with all of its detail. So what I want you to see is that when I laid out the text and then thought about what all the drawings should have, I paid attention to the clues that were given to me, faithful to all of the details in the park. This is another very interesting sequence. This is my drawing. And the text is, the shoes were so happy they danced with galoshes. And here I had this idea that the shoes and the galoshes would be dancing at the bandshell. This was my beginning drawing. You can see here, this is a picture of the bandshell. The bandshell was also designed by Jacob Raymould. You can see the design of the interior of the bandshell. And then I took some photographs. I was trying to fool around with how would this work. And then I just started drawing. I have no drawing talent whatsoever, but I'm going to show you, this is what the artist began to do with it. Then I decided that the shoes and the galoshes should wear hats. And if they wore hats, they had to be really New York hats. And those hats had to come from the Rockettes. So I then sent the artist pictures of the hats of the Rockettes. And she said to me, when are you going to stop? She couldn't believe it, all of this detail. These are the shoes and the galoshes that are dancing at the bandshell. And this was so beautiful that it not only was used within the story to illustrate the text, it also was used in the cover. So these are some of the mittens that the artist drew. These were all reusable elements. The first thing that you will see is some of those mittens are wearing hats. The second thing you'll see are the architectural motifs of the park in the mittens and the gloves. Next, there are no pairs of mittens. Everything pairs up with its happy partner, but it doesn't have to be a happy partner just like itself. It can be a happy partner that is unlike itself. And the mood is exuberant. So this was, as an author working with an artist, I was very fortunate. I had an artist that was able to take what I was giving her and put it into the design of the artwork that built the story. These are socks and umbrellas also having a party. You can see everything is very happy. This was another thing that was done, great collaboration between the artist and the author, who's me. If you notice, this, when I say faithful to the park, this, the text here, deep inside Central Park, they danced under the stars, all those lost mittens, lost toys, dolls, and scarves. This scene takes place in Sheep Meadow. And Sheep Meadow, looking to the west side, you can see the skyline. That's an important element. You see the exact shape of the west side skyline. So here again, I drew, nothing. You see my drawing ability is zero, but I was able to draw the skyline, the trees, dancing elements, and then I put sheep in. This is one of the very beginning drawings by the artist of Sheep Meadow. And then this is actually a beautiful painting that the artist did. The thing that is so interesting about the illustrations of the book is that they imbue the reader with the feeling of Central Park. We know this is Sheep Meadow because there are sheep. I always ask people this question. You see the dancing sheep? There was another, this is another detail, Bethesda Terrace and the Angel of the Waters Fountain. And this is how it came into the book, all colors and sizes, some wool and some leather. They clapped, skipped, and jumped and danced all together. And you see the arches of Bethesda Terrace and the Angel of the Waters Fountain in the middle. This is my beginning of Alice in Wonderland. And then this is what the artist did. This is where the mittens are singing and dancing and playing before they go home for children. I decided, as I said to you before, that the book should not just be limited to children, that grown-ups needed magic too. And there's a section of the story that's a PS for grown-ups. And it begins, I'm going to read to you. And when you are grown up with hurry-up days, warm memories of pumpkins and jingle bell sleighs fly you high over stars all aglow in the dark to the Lost Mitten party deep inside Central Park, where your childhood treasures, toy ponies and trains, come to life once again in the Mitten parade. And forever and always, whether nearby or far, whether grown up or child, whoever you are, whatever you lose in the rush of the day comes to Central Park's meadows to run, skate, and play. Now, on you don't see the facing page here, but the facing page of this particular set of this particular text is Bow Bridge. And in this section, the section dedicated to adults, I changed the objects that adults were losing. Adults were losing things that were a little more grown up. They were losing their subway cards and their library cards and their museum of their Metropolitan Museum of Art buttons and their subway tokens. Now, this is a very important thing that I'm going to say to you. If you want to use an item that is trademarked, you have to get permission to use it, and you also have to usually pay for it. But as I was sitting recovering from my broken ankle, I just drew facsimiles of these objects so that they evoked the object without being the actual object. Here you see again the subway card, the museum button, the library card, the subway token. On the right, you see a teddy bear, and that teddy bear has FAO on it. There is nothing that I use in my book that is a trademarked item. Everything evokes, I evoke the park, but I don't use anything that is a trademarked, logoed item. This was another thing at the end of the book, the section, there's a copious section of notes. And as I mentioned before, the graphic designer, Paul Veras, had become ill and I had to replace him and have another graphic designer work on the notes. And at first I thought that this was really not going to be good. I thought this was going to be difficult. But as it turned out, Simon Stahl had some fantastic ideas. And I want you to take a look at the font that he used for the notes. That font is the Playbill font. So through and through, this is a New York book from start to finish. This is another example of the notes. Okay, now here I am. I look pretty happy there because at the end of this project, at the end of this phase of the project, I think I had 20 copies made. They were readers' copies and they were very expensive. And I think they cost $35 each. In order to go to show somebody the book that they'd be ordering, you have to have something that looks good. And you also have to have something that they can keep. These readers' copies were done by a fabulous printer, very good quality paper. They're not hardcover, but they're just beautiful. And I walked into the park. I had a meeting with the Conservancy. I thought, this is really going to be amazing. I had the quilt, I had the readers' copies, I had some other materials with me, data sheets. And the buyer, the actual buyer, sat down with me and she said, we're placing an order for your book. She took me into the dairy. This was a moment I'll probably remember for my whole life. She took me into the dairy and she pointed across the room and she said, and your book will go there and there. I was ready. I almost fell down, but I said to her calmly, just like a mature person, I said, that sounds good. So I was just very calm. We spoke for a few minutes and then I went out into the park, and I called one small publisher who had been interested in the project. I said, you know, Central Park the Conservancy wants to order this book, and I'm not sure what to do. Because I said, I'm not sure that I have a publisher to work with. He said, his name is Mark Wyman. He said, take the order, we'll figure out how this is going to get done. And this is me on my birthday. This is when that first order came through. And I was just ecstatic. The reason I wanted to work with a publisher was because publishers have distribution. And the distribution that I was looking for was with Baker and Taylor and Ingram. So what I did was I created an imprint. We called it Ginger Spice Imprint, which I own, and I did a joint venture with the publisher so that I have the distribution. Now, if you think that my job was done because I had a beautiful story and I had my first order placement in the park, I can tell you that my work was just beginning, because I needed to print the book, I needed a website, I needed marketing. So these are all the things. I want you to understand that when you write a story, it's like a puzzle, and you have to figure out integrated elements that are going to, so that your puzzle forms a cohesive whole. Having a story is not enough. What else do you need? Well, you need very good places to sell your book. I was selling my book at the Central Park Conservancy store right from the beginning in the visitor centers. But now the book is also on their website. I went to an alumni event at Yale. I'm also, I did my bachelor's at Hunter, and I have an MPhil from Yale. And the Yale bookstore is a Barnes & Noble bookstore. And they had me do a signing when I was in New Haven. And then I was able to get the book into Barnes & Noble, into the chains. And that was also important. There are a few very important Barnes & Nobles in New York City, and also Barnes & Noble is national. The book was on Amazon from the very beginning. And Amazon, if you're thinking of placing a book, Amazon is important because when someone buys the book on Amazon, they can write a review. So as much as I would like you to go to your local bookstore and buy the book, there are 56 five-star reviews of my book on Amazon. And those reviews count. They help you sell other books. I was also very fortunate. I retained the relationship that I had with FAO until this very day. And when the book was ready, I sent it to the top guy at FAO who had been interested in the book from the beginning. And they began inviting me to FAO to sign the book. FAO was no longer in the GM building at 59th and 5th. It was at Rockefeller Center. So I went to Rockefeller Center. I signed my book 4 times last year. I packaged myself and the book so that I fit right into the FAO atmosphere. And I'm telling you, I just got today an email from that same top guy. He knows I'm doing this presentation today. And he said, we can't wait to have you back in the store. And it is thrilling for me as an author to be signing my book right next to that ice skating rink, which is another very important thing that I'll get to in a few minutes. The book is also on the website of a neuroscientist, Rick Hansen, and that's very important because it has this feeling, this feel-good feeling that parents and grandparents and children need, especially now in this environment. I took the book and my artwork to art shows. I started making masks. I took art workshops, and I also became a counselor in a summer camp where I was doing art with children, creating puppets out of found, you know, if you have 2 socks, you lose one, you can make a puppet of the sock that you have. I created postcards and data sheets. I was constantly updating the website. There were lectures like the one I'm doing today, and readings, special events with children. And then I told you about the special packaging, especially if I had an important reading like the signing at FAO. Okay, these are some of my puppets. These puppets, you know, they're fun to make. They're fun for grown-ups. They're fun for kids. These two puppets, I probably made them in 10 minutes each. They're nothing. They're just some things that you can glue onto a sock. You know, whatever old jewelry you have, if you have one earring, you could stick it on the puppet. You go to the 99-cent store, you get ribbon for the hair and you glue it on the top of the head, and you have a wonderful puppet that a kid can have fun with. Then I have drawings that children color on their own. And I have lots of drawings of mittens that children have made over the years, especially if I go into a school. Okay, this is a mask that I made. This is on the, you might see, to me it's on the right, there's a couple dancing. This is at the band shell. And then you see I also in this mask have some of the, I tried to evoke some of the architectural elements of the park. This is me at an art show where my very basic drawing is put together with a beautiful artwork of the artist. And here I was talking about collaboration between authors and artists. Now, what am I doing here? This was probably the nuttiest experience I had. I was on a flight and it was Halloween. And the crew said, "What were you doing in New York?" And I said, "I was signing my book at FAO Schwarz." And they said, "When this plane is 20,000 feet up in the air, we're going to give you the mic and have you talk to the whole plane," which I did. And then a few of the people who were on that plane came up to me and they ordered the book as gifts for their corporations for Christmas, which was really fantastic. Okay, so how did my book come together? I want you to remember that the basis of the book was a well-written story. And yesterday I heard this quote from Eric Carle. And he said, you know, you're writing a novel, you can write thousands of words, but when you write a children's book, every word has to count. As I told you before, I worked on that story for at least 6 years before it was finished. And it's well-written text that is as perfect as possible. There's not one extra word. I had a feel-good message that solved a universal problem and had universal appeal. My story took place in an iconic location. I did in-depth research about the park. The book, I want you to understand that this went well beyond money. This was really a labor of love. It was because as I was, remember the backdrop of the story was that an adult lost an object and felt bad, and then they were happy that it was having a party in the park. But also, as my mother was sick, I was walking in that park day after day, month after month, feeling tremendously cared for. And I understood the importance of urban public parks and the importance of the work of the Conservancy. So I said, I understood the audience, the artwork, and the puzzle pieces. And of course, I was willing to do the marketing. Now, what happens next? I am very pleased to see here in our audience a person who is intimately involved with what is going to happen next, or what we hope will happen next. And, you know, it could be many different things. It could be a performance. It could be an animation. It could be a bigger distribution. There are many, many things that could still happen because the story is really a classic. It's not limited to any particular time and space. And no matter who is reading that story, people feel very good about it. And that's an important thing, that I understand not only the current audience, but the ways in which the concept can amplify. Okay, so what if you want to give this a try? Okay, maybe we have some budding authors here who want to write a beautiful children's book. The first thing I want you to do is really work on your text. It is so important to have good written text. Then you have to understand all the marketing pieces of getting your work out there. And you have to really be prepared to do the work. Everything that I have talked about today are things that I did on my own. You can imagine, as an individual, how did I make that happen? You might say it's impossible, but dreams do come true. Then there are organizations that help writers. These are three that I really like: the Authors Guild, the Independent Book Publishers Association, and the Women's National Book Association. Incidentally, men and anyone can belong to the Women's National Book Association, but it's very, very helpful in terms of written work that you want to get out there. If you want to contact me, this is an email that you can use, and you can go look at the website. Please feel free to write me, ask me. I have some things I'm going to show you afterwards. And, thank you for coming. It's really terrific to tell you all of these different things. So I just want to show you one thing that you're going to laugh about. This is what I started with, pieces of paper, right? And now this is what I have at the end, this beautiful book, right? At FAO Schwarz, in libraries across the country, right? At the Central Park Conservancy. It's totally amazing. I see people looking at me, but I don't know what.
We're clapping.
Well done, my dear. Well done.
It took a lot of effort.
This
Can you
was
share what-
amazing. I'm not writing a book, but I'm going to get quite a few copies. One for myself and for a lot of people I know. I
have to tell you, there is one person here who knows all of, well, more than one, but there's one person here who is a woman who was very much involved with me in the years that I spent, that I was responsible for my mother. And I told you there's another person here who knows me ever since I was born. I don't know how I would have survived had it not been for the park. I was just in that park walking my brains out, and I had thought of the story, but as I was walking in the park and I began to understand, I'm putting my hands together so you can see, I began to understand how things fit together and how I could enhance the concept in a way that would make it unique. When the Conservancy in that moment told me that they were placing an order for that was the first order I had, and it was at the visitor centers of the park itself, I thought to myself, this is totally amazing. I had spent years working on this. And I asked the buyer, I said, why are you buying this book? She said, you have done this with such great love that other people will appreciate your work. And that's how I feel. I feel in a way that this was something that I cared so much about, and putting it together in a way that would really enhance and be the opposite of so many negative things that are going on in the world, that I thought this is something that I have to offer. And to have someone at that level recognize it was really beautiful for me. And even to have you here, this is beautiful for me.
This is a pleasure for us to hear your story of the inception of the idea and the final product. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Is anyone working on a story? Is anyone working on something now? Do you want to say what it is, Chauncey?
I published the first of what will be a number of volumes of my essays written over the last 40 years on Amazon last November. And it's been a fascinating experience. One of the things, Fran, that I would say was remarkable to me is that as the book gets purchased and people review it and interact with it, I meet myself in a new way. I had no idea. It has enriched and changed my interpretation of who I am. And I'm sure that you have that experience as well. And I salute you for the beautiful thing that you've done.
Thank you. You know, it's very interesting because I saw this quote. It said, you have to keep working on the impossible until it's done. You have to keep working on the impossible until it's done. And this was really impossible. I had so many setbacks. I had this beautiful thing going on at the beginning, and then I couldn't execute. I had a huge family responsibility. Right. Then this thing with breaking my ankle, and somehow you have to use what happens to you in a positive way. But I want to emphasize something that I don't think most authors realize. I realized it because I had written other books and I was always involved, even if the publisher was a very big publisher. I was always involved in the marketing. And I understood that here I had to figure out what the marketing would be from the very beginning. Now, I could have started with a little neighborhood bookstore, but I went to the top. And I got people engaged, to be engaged in my project, because I just stayed in touch with them. I went back. Each and every time I had something to show them, I went back. When I met Giovanna, I had the quilt made. I had it in New York. And she was the curator of the quilt department at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And that was another place that I was haunting in any free moment that I had, because I had enormous solace from artwork and from being around art. And one day I took a tour of the quilt department, and the quilt department had a library. And from that meeting, or a series of meetings, 11 years ago, or 10 years ago, that's why I'm here today, that this relationship has gone on, and people become your champions when they really believe in your project. But yes, you have to be able to execute it at a level that gives it has to contribute something to the world. It can't be just that you want to make money out of it, or, I mean, there are so many famous people, actors, actresses, political figures writing books. Who are you as an individual author? Do you really have something that the world wants to know about, that the world wants to hear? So you have to communicate something with tremendous integrity and build on that. And then talk to people about it, ask them. The two ideas that I had that really made the book better than my original concept. I wasn't thinking about the first line of the book had to mention Central Park, or the title had to include Central Park, or the detail, the lamps had to include the little acorn on the top. But I want to show you something. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. This is, let me just try this a different way. This was a reader's copy, and you can see the title of the book is all in one color and it's in one font style, correct?
Yep.
Okay, this is a teaching moment. And you can see that the actual cover of the book has the title in different types.
Yep.
And in different font styles. And it also, I don't know if you can see this, but that title is covered with a spot gloss. What does that mean? When I was in the dairy and the buyer said, and your book will go there, and there was across the room. And I wanted the book to have enough heft so that if it was across the room, when someone came in, it would attract their eye.
Yes.
That's why that title has a spot gloss. The artist who designed the two artists who designed the book did not make that change. It was the graphic designer of the printer. Okay,
Who brought that?
that was who made that beautiful change.
Fran, the beauty of the quality of your attention to life and your engagement with other human beings, and I know you well over many years, the quality of your engagement with life is deeply seductive. And I am not at all surprised at your success with this. I congratulate you, and I'm thrilled to have seen the note that you were going to be doing this and come and do it.
You know, I see someone here who's very special to me in my recent life, but I don't want to let the cat out of the bag right now. And I think that there will be a performance of the book in a very, very, very special way,
Good.
Which is very exciting, and that I will have to use my marketing genius in the same way going forward.
Good.
And I can only say, oh, nobody has asked me this question. They didn't ask me how much things cost, right? Does anybody want to know that? If you're getting your book out there, what you might spend on an artist or, okay. So let's see. I would say that, trying to think, the artwork alone, the two artists, this is just for the woman in the red dress and the woman in the green dress and the woman in the yellow dress. That artwork, it wasn't cheap. I felt I had to pay people fairly, and I wanted to own the artwork. Now, I don't know, the one artist I might have paid $3,000, and another artist who did much less work, maybe $1,500, and probably the graphic designer, another $1,500 or maybe a little bit more. But the thing is that so maybe the artwork was $6,000. Now the printing, I do have one important note I would like you to make in my how to be an author publishing venture person. If you print books, do not have them shrink wrapped. It's much cheaper if you have them shrink wrapped when they're printed. But if you print, especially if you print overseas, you will never know the quality of the books that you are getting, and you will have to go through every single book. And I mean, you will have to open the book and look at the pages, and you will have to make sure that nothing is cut and the binding is correct. Now, in my book, I have 4-color inside pages. A lot of inside pages are just white. If you go home and open up any book, an art book, you'll see that the pages are just white. But this book has color pages. Very often, what you'll get when you get samples of the printing, you'll get perfect samples, but what you'll receive in the entire shipment might only be half usable. And you have to make sure that these books are not shrink wrapped, and you can go through them, each and every one, and make sure that they're printed correctly. If you think that I was going to send damaged books to FAO Schwarz or the Conservancy, you are highly mistaken. Everything had to be perfect. I want people to be able to get a perfect copy of my book. The other thing that I did at FAO, I didn't do this with the Conservancy. At FAO, I was selling lots of books and I was shipping a lot of books. when I ship these books, I learned to ship them via FedEx, because if a shipment was lost or damaged, FedEx would track it, whereas the post office was just a mess. Boxes of books arrived and they were broken and the books weren't usable, or maybe the boxes weren't found at all, and the post office didn't have a good enough tracking system. But with FedEx, if something went wrong, I had one very important signing at FAO where I had shipped lots of books, and only half of the books got there. They were shipped with the post office. And FedEx, I was overnighting if I needed it. They overnighted the books to me for me. If they messed up, they immediately stepped in and fixed the problem. So that's another important thing. I will say that in some regards, if you're a shy person, marketing your book is not going to be something that you're comfortable with, because you really have to go and speak to people. You have to be able to stand there and have somebody say to you, I'm busy and I can't talk to you now. Or why do you think I would want to talk to you? You're one of, a lot of authors. And one of the things that I found was that by doing these puppet workshops, I was teaching school principals and teachers and kids how to make puppets. I have to tell you, for those of you who know how I spent my life, I was a recruiter in technology, and I spent my life working with fast-paced, high-powered people. And all of a sudden, I was making puppets in workshops. I had to laugh. It was one of the most liberating experiences I've ever had. Does anybody have a question about approaching an agent or getting a publisher for their book?
You can unmute if you'd like to ask your question. There are a number of comments in the chat. No questions, but comments. How much people enjoyed learning about the whole process.
Well, I want to, this is sort of a plug for an organization. I belong, and I actually am on the board for the Women's National Book Association, the chapter, one of the chapters in California. And there is an event here. It's called Pitch-O-Rama, PITCH-O-RAMA, which introduces authors to agents. And it's taking place, I think, on April 10th. And I don't know if there's any, thank you. I don't know if there's still any space, but there is a tutorial that helps an author package their concept so they are preparing to speak to an agent. And then there's a session where authors actually meet, I think it's 10 or 15 agents. And, it's very helpful. I want you to write something down. It's very helpful to be told no. And I want you to write down A, B, and C. Sounds really wild. Of course, you know A, B, and C. If you are thinking of pitching what you're doing to anyone, I want you to pitch it first to the C's. Those are the people that you don't care about. You can make a lot of mistakes when you pitch to a C. You lose nothing. A C will tell you what's wrong with your pitch, and you'll refine your work. Then from the C's, you go to the B's. The B's are people that you may care about, and you pitch your work again. They'll probably also tell you no, and you'll keep on refining your concept, right? But they told you no, you've lost nothing. No, from no, you get a lot of information. Then after you've had maybe 50 rejections in a row, and nobody likes what you're doing, and they have no use for what you're presenting, then you go to the A's, because then you're prepared, right? So that's what you do. You take your darling work, the work that you care so much about, that you've spent writing for 15 years and longing to see published, and in bookshops all over the world, and you begin talking about it. And don't be afraid. It's not horrible if somebody tells you no. It's a learning experience. And then, I mean, I've found, oh, this was a very interesting thing. Sometimes I'm walking in New York. This is thrilling for me because I'd like to tell you how many publishers in New York told me no. It's amazing. I am walking in New York and I'm walking in the park. And I walk down the mall, right? And I walk to the dairy and I see my book there. And I have to tell you, it's unbelievable. I was at a trade show and I said, well, my book is being sold in Central Park. And they said, oh, do you have a little stand where you're selling your book on a little push cart? I said, no, my book is sold in the dairy. It's sold in all of the visitor centers. But I was laughing. I thought I could sell it on a push cart. I mean, it's, but it was just so amusing. Okay, well, I thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Fran. This was really, really special. And the book is also in bookstores, correct?
Yes, it's in
Also,
bookstores. You can,
Amazon.
it's especially Barnes and Noble. You can order it from your local bookstore. They can, because there is distribution, they can get it. I will ask one favor, should you decide to order it on Amazon, please write a review. That is extremely helpful. And I just want to say I thank Giovanna very much for her kindness to me 10 years ago when I marched into the museum with my quilt and the book on sheets of paper. And I thank you all for coming today. I hope that you have a safe and sound spring and that you're outside in some urban park near you very soon. Okay, bye
Sounds
now.
wonderful. And hopefully
Thank you very much.
we'll be able to have a guided tour with you.
Oh,
in
absolutely.
the fall or winter. That would be so much fun. Yeah.
You know, just get in touch with me.
Okay.
You have an email that will reach me, that's for sure.
Okay. Very nice. Oh, Anne is asking one of our patrons if you'll join one of my author events. This is an author event, but we'd love to do a children's author event. We do a lot of teen and adult books.
This is another thing that I will do. If anybody has a child's event where they, especially a library or school, where you want to have the story read and then make art projects, that's another thing that it's just a lot of fun. You can do it without me and you can do it with me.
And through the magic of Zoom, you can be anywhere in the world and participate. So stay tuned. We'll have Fran back and it'd be lovely to have you actually in Harrison. But until that time, we'll meet you in Manhattan when you're back in New York.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
Giovanna, I wonder if you could capture the chat. I haven't seen it.
Sure.
That would be great.
I can capture it. A lot of lovely compliments.
Thank you all for coming, especially the people that I know. I'm so gratified.
And you'll be happy to. Go ahead, sorry.
I think this is great that Maura North mentioned it's going to be soon seen on ice. That's great.
Yeah, I'm glad she said that. Yeah, it's a thrilling project. If you really want to have a thrill and you're an author of a book, you go to a meeting and you have the costume designer wearing some Mitten costume.
Where did you find a publisher that published quality books?
I beg your pardon?
Where did you find a publisher that published quality product?
Do you mean a publisher or a printer?
I'm sorry, a printer.
email me, because that is a tricky question. I don't want to malign anybody, but I can give you ideas of how to gauge what a printer can do. And a lot of things have changed since COVID. If you're thinking of printing in quantity, you may have to print outside the country. It's tricky. It's tricky.
Fran, also want to say that this was a really great workshop, and this is a great resource for authors, future authors, and illustrators. And I'm really glad the program is going to be on YouTube, so people who are not able to make it today will be able to see and hear you. This was
Spoken
great.
by my favorite librarian.
Thank you.
Yes, we will have this placed on the Harrison Public Library's YouTube channel as soon as we can, probably in a few days, and you'll be able to watch it again there.
Oh, thank
And
you. I can see some of the comments. Very kind of you. My pleasure.
I wanted to mention that one of our viewers tonight is joining us from Japan. In case you were,
fantastic.
Akiko, who's one of our regular patrons who moved back to Japan from previously living in Harrison, is here tonight. So you're getting a worldwide audience tonight. So
Yes, I and Harold Holzer.
yes, you and Harold Holzer, who happen to know one another. Well, this is one question for you. Talking about other countries, access to your books. Any thought to having the book translated into other languages?
It's funny that you say that. I didn't mention this. My original career, when I went to Yale, I actually was, when I first started my career, I was on the faculty of two different universities in the Department of Spanish and Latin American Literature. And I myself have thought about, would the book be translatable? But one of the things that I really want to mention is the rhyme of the text in English, and the cadence. And I'm not sure that I'm just not sure about that. It's possible, but this is because of the poetry of the text. I'm not quite so sure. The idea, however, is that it's a beautiful idea that whenever you lose something, it goes to Central Park and has a party, and then comes. It is really totally, even now when I lose things, I just say it's in Central Park having a party. It's not so bad. Okay.
Well, you'll see the comment from Akiko from Japan. I'm so happy to meet a great author. Thank you for giving me a wonderful opportunity.
Anytime. If you're writing something, be in touch.
Okay.
Happy to help.
You gave us your email address, which was?
The email address, you can use Central Park. I think it's Central. I put it in the.
You did.
It's in the slide. Central Park Lost Mittens @gmail.com. It's rather long, but.
Okay.
I think most of the world is learning English too, so I think your book would be well.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. It does that actually. People who are teaching English have approached me about using the book.
Wonderful. More to come. We'll be following you, Fran. See what happens next.
I'm working on some other things now, but of course this is a project that really has legs because it's classic. It isn't limited to a particular year or time. And the other thing, I want to emphasize one thing about reading. And one of the ideas that really is a linchpin of the concept, when the mother is soothing the child, that mother is reading to the child. And this is what I wanted. I wanted the idea of closeness that a child has from sitting with a grown-up and reading something, I think that that is just an eternal concept that we need to emphasize.
Yes, definitely. And next month we have Library Week with the American Library Association. So we can feature your book at least at the Harrison Library.
Yeah, thank
And-
you.
and
That's, yeah.
The beauty of reading with your family and the bond that it creates.
You know, the book is also in the Westchester County Children's Museum. And it used to be called, when I was a kid, we went to Playland at Rye Beach, right?
Yes, it's still, Rye Beach is still there, yeah. and
Yes.
Playland too.
And but they have this museum there, and the book is there. Okay.
And
I'm
it's
gonna
in
sign-
Harrison. Have a
I'm gonna
good
sign
night,
off now.
everyone. Okay.
Yes. Thank you so
everybody
much.
for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes. Bye now.
Stay
Just
well. Good night.
just a pleasure.